You're listening to All Things Video, the podcast dedicated to uncovering the past and charting the future of the online video ecosystem. You're listening to All Things Video. I'm your host, James Creech, and today's guest is Brendan Gahan, Chief Social Officer for Mekanism. Brendan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, excited we get to do this. We've known each other forever. I feel like I met you way back when in my ad tech days before, I even really knew what this whole digital media industry was all about, and kept in touch through my time in influencer marketing on the Creator Network agency side, and then with Paladin. So it's been years, and it's cool to finally get a chance to really sit down with you and hear about more of your journey.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Thanks for having me. This will be fun.
Totally. So, starting things off, take us back to the start, right? What was your earliest experience with social media that you can remember?
Yeah, so I graduated from college in 2005, and I got an internship in advertising. And I was supposed to be, I eventually got hired, and I was a junior account executive, which I was awful at, not organized or any of these things. But it was that era where social media was just becoming a thing. And being one of the younger people in the office, people would just sort of inevitably be, picking my brain. And so I got thinking about the space quite a bit and just sort of started proactively pitching ideas. And I sold one through. We were about to pass on this client because they didn't have that much money. I was like, why don't we just pitch them working with these YouTubers? And so the partners of the agency were very cool, and we're like, sure, go for it. And I did, and the client bought it, and we ended up working with Smosh, who, we all know is massive. And this was in 2006. We crashed the client's website, all that, and it was great. So I was like, okay, this is the space that I want to be in, and sort of just never looked back.
That's awesome. So you start, in the agency world, and I know over the years you've spent time in LA, the Bay Area, New York, right? And for now, at least, you've kind of settled in New York. So what drew you to the other side of the country, originally from California?
That's a good question. Basically, what drew me was I sold my company. I started a small agency, and I sold it to Mekanism. And as part of the deal, I had to move to New York, but to be honest, I was practically living here anyways. When I was doing my own thing, the majority of our clients were in New York. I was here all the time. I started, dating a woman here who is now my fiance, and so I pretty much I was practically living in New York anyway, so it was an easy decision.
Nice. And this is kind of your second tour of duty with Mekanism, right? So you joined them early on, then you had a brief stint at Fullscreen, and like you said, kind of went out on your own and launched your own social agency, which was later acquired by Mekanism. That was Epic Signal. So tell us a little bit about Epic Signal and what was the original inspiration behind it.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of Epic Signal, really, to be honest, I left Fullscreen, and I did not need to set out and start a company. I really thought I was going to sort of freelance and consult and kind of reevaluate what it was that I wanted to do. But influencer marketing was just popping off in a way that it had never happened like that before. And at that point, whatever, this is like 2013. So I'd been doing influencer marketing for 7 years, and pretty much, no joke, almost, well, not all my clients, but a ton of the clients that I'd worked with, or, former agency coworkers, friends, acquaintances, all these people started coming out of woodwork, and were like, hey, we need to figure out what our influencer strategy is. Can you help us? Because that was the thing that I'd just been doing, and there weren't that many people, at least compared to now, doing that. And so I kind of just fell into doing that, and I took on more work than I myself could handle. So I hired people and had a nice little boutique agency doing influencer marketing and a little bit of helping brands with like their YouTube content strategy and that sort of thing.
Very cool. And had you always considered yourself an entrepreneur? I mean, you had these ideas about consulting or kind of sitting out on your own and figuring out what you wanted to do. Was it natural to just start an agency, or did you kind of stumble into it?
Um, I definitely stumbled into it. I would say before that, I was very much an entrepreneur. Like I always kind of carved out my own niche, and I think it's in large part because I like the process of figuring out how to do something, and so anything that was relatively established, I didn't like the fact that there would be, you know, processes or, you know, people who were, you know, just by the nature of being earlier were more senior, and so I kind of always gravitated towards these sort of edge cases. In you know, back in whatever 2006, 2007, influencer marketing was, you know, people didn't even know what to call it. There were no processes, and so it was like, it was great. I was all in, you know, in that and just social media in general.
Very cool. So what was the hardest part about being a first-time founder when you know, hung the shingle and launched Epic Signal?
Oh my God. There were so many things that were hard. I mean, that's ultimately why I sold, because I was just I was burnt out. Like I was working nonstop. Like you know, um, and the pressure of sort of being the sole, like real, like, you know, leader in the organization was really hard. I had talked to a couple of friends about kind of joining up and being business partners, but the timing sort of just never worked out. And I think had I found somebody that I could sort of you know, collaborate with, and maybe we could kind of shoulder the burden together, it would have been a bit easier, and I probably would have been a bit more inclined to keep going. But it's I really just enjoy doing the work and the strategy, and seeing things being brought to life. The idea of sort of growing the business for growing the business sake, I was less interested in, and so yeah, it was very much a happy accident.
That's awesome. And it sounds very much like what you do focus on today at Mechanism, right? In addition to, you know, executing on these client deliverables and thinking about the strategy and executing the work, you know, I also consider you one of the foremost thinkers about our space, right? You're constantly researching, experimenting, posting about, you know, the things that you're curious about and are testing in this landscape.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I really, I like the experimental aspects for sure. And, you know, if there's some new emerging platform, like I love pitching that to a client, being like, hey, why don't we do the first ever blank, or if some new feature comes out, let's do, you know, let's be the first to jump on it. That's I think the aspect of the business that I enjoy the most.
Very cool. So yeah, a lot of firsts this year, and I know you've had a few experiments that you've been, you know, leaning into. Can you share some of the stuff that you've focused on in 2020?
Sure. Well, let's see. From a first standpoint, let's see. There were probably a couple, but the one that maybe jumps out for me, I think, is we actually did a Triller branded hashtag challenge, which was pretty cool. It was for a pro bono campaign, and we got Curtis Roach, the board in the house guy, to sort of create a custom song for us. So that was really exciting. I think,
Nice.
you know, Triller is I think culturally in a bit of a different place from TikTok. It's a little bit more niche, but I don't know. It was a lot of fun to do something like that. We've done a handful of TikTok branded hashtag challenges, and those are amazing as well. Although I think we did those before this year. So that's something that I think was like one of those experimental things I really enjoyed doing that comes to mind. The other thing that is probably relevant is more of a personal one, which is I made a goal of sort of putting myself out there a lot more this year. Historically, I think I very much, you know, I spent so much time on client work. I didn't really focus on my own whatever, personal brand, thought leader, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
But so I made it a goal to sort of start writing and just putting myself out there. And so that led to me posting on LinkedIn every day. And then I rebuilt my blog and I just launched a newsletter, and I started a TikTok maybe about 4 months ago. And that's been really fun to sort of apply a lot of those things work, and like it's totally your responsibility to do it. And that's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So why TikTok? What made you gravitate towards the platform, and what have your key learnings been so far?
Yeah. Ultimately, I think the reason for TikTok is the organic reach is just other level. Like there's nothing like it. I think, we did multiple brand hashtag challenges and saw sort of the scale and the impact and the participation, which was just unprecedented in so many ways. And so that sort of got me thinking a bit, but that was a while ago. And then, my fiance has an account, and, some of her TikToks just right off the bat just blew up. And it's one of those things where it's like, that this is a big deal and you should do it, but like the fear of putting yourself in front of the camera is ultimately the thing that was stopping me anyways. And finally I just kind of was like, I should just do it, because it's like my goal was to sort of put myself out there, and like doing it on LinkedIn is cool and it's fun, but the growth is very slow. And I generally think I skew a little bit on the shyer side. So I thought it would be good to sort of get over, putting myself in front of the camera or talking in front of the camera. And so it was really just a fun challenge, I guess.
That's awesome, man. Good for you. I mean, that resonates with me a lot, because as someone, I share a lot of those same sentiments. Like it took me forever. It took me 5 years to launch a video version of a podcast called All Things Video. So I feel you, just in terms of like, all the logistics of figuring out how to do video content and then, putting yourself out there. And I need to do a better job of like posting on LinkedIn. I've been trying to do a bit more of that this year, but I should do more of a concerted effort, like you and Phil Ranta and all these other great minds that are constantly sharing cool updates on the platform.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, honestly, like the connections and relationships that I've formed as a result have really been great. And in working on these big brands, and I'm sure it's the same way for you. You're working with a bunch of clients, and it's not, you're working with a lot of other people, and a lot of people are weighing in on things, and they're smart, but oftentimes you've got something you want to do. And so it's nice to kind of own something. That's a big aspect that I really enjoy.
So when can we expect the rest of the Brendan Gahan media empire? When are we going to see Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and Twitch?
Yeah, one thing at a time. But Instagram for me is like very, I'm not actually that big on it personally. Like I'll post, like if I'm traveling somewhere, there's some big kind of, I don't know, like a holiday or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I would like to do more. I think it's really just a cost benefit of time. So maybe once I get some momentum and like I feel like the newsletter has some real traction, I'll start to build on top of that.
There we go. Well, talking a little bit about TikTok, this really feels like it's been the year for short form, looping video. Of course, Vine introduced us to this concept years and years ago, but it's really had this resurgence, spurred on by TikTok, certainly, but, TikTok facing legal challenges from the Trump administration and giving rise to these TikTok clones like Triller and other kind of local versions. Seeing that play out in other countries too, like India, which banned TikTok, and now 67% of market share has been, these local competitors that have emerged. And then of course, Instagram getting into the game, Snapchat, YouTube getting into the game with kind of copycat products. Why the gold rush? Why now? And, why are people leaning into short form video?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there's a bunch of answers. And I think one is, it's big in China, and you know, this format has been proven to work really well. And you know, I was reading some stats the other day. 50% of the, I think more than 50% of the Chinese population opens Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, every single day, which is insane. That's like, I don't know, 600 plus thousand people. Sorry, 600 plus million people.
That's right.
Sorry. Way off there. So they're a bit of a leading indicator, I think, in a lot of ways of what we can expect here in the US. They went from sort of, you know, for lack of a better term, copycats, just, you know, maybe 5-10 years ago, to now the innovators and everyone else is sort of trying to catch up. So I think that's a factor. And I also think the format is just really clever and smart. If you think about it, it's full screen video, it's short form. So you've got to be quick and punchy, and it really lends itself to scrolling. And I've seen some people share some stats. I don't know where they got this data or whatever, but it makes sense to me. And it's that people watch an average of 200 TikToks per session, but on Instagram, it's about 100. Twitter, it's about 75 tweets. And on YouTube, it's like, I think 2 to 3 videos or something. And if you think about that's so many opportunities to sort of get sticky content in front of people, to learn what they like. I mean, the learning opportunities like are insane. They can really zero in on, okay, this person likes this, so we can make the experience that much more sticky. And then, you know, it's easy to incorporate a lot of ads. So I think that form function is just really inherently viral and probably a great business model.
Yeah, no, super smart. And I was talking to Ricky Ray Butler about this exact kind of question the other day. And it's interesting because he touched on similar themes. We both kind of agreed that TikTok is fun, right? It's like easy, it's casual. And so for that reason, creators really love it. And it doesn't feel as, I don't know, stuffy or traditional as some platforms like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube have grown to become. There's kind of there's you know, these acceptable practices on each of those platforms. And if you don't kind of fit in the mold, you know, it's harder to maybe build an audience or feel like you belong. But on TikTok, it's kind of like anything goes right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a little bit of like rebellion to that, like Instagram FOMO, like I'm beautiful, like that perfection, I think is alienating to a lot of people, and you know, makes you feel pretty shitty sometimes, probably. And there is something really refreshing around TikTok, because like there's so much random stuff, so many smart people, so many goofy people, and it's a, you know, it's less of like, look at me and look at this awesome life I'm living, and more like, look at this clever thing I came up with.
Yeah, totally. And I think your point too about how the Chinese market is a leading indicator for what's going to happen in North America, you know, Western Central Europe, et cetera, is a good one. You know, it feels like, you know, we're not just behind in short form video, but also live streaming, social commerce, right? All of these things that are just accepted practice in China and are prevalent across all these platforms, only now starting to really gain more traction and attention in the West.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the live streaming thing, live streaming plus e-commerce, that, you know, QVC with influencers, that is just going to be, I mean, it's massive in China. It's like 136 billion in e-commerce sales this year. I'm sure it's going to be really impactful here. And we're already starting to see, I think the platforms are really sort of preparing for that. You know, you saw so many features getting rolled out to support social commerce and live commerce in particular. From the social side, you saw, you know, Facebook Shops rolling out features. You know, you can do live selling. There was an announcement that YouTube is going to be rolling out something similar. And then from the commerce side, you see Amazon rolling out Amazon Live. And I mean, they've got that live tab on the homepage. And, you know, given the kind of shot in the arm that live streaming got this year, it makes a lot of sense. I think it, this year, if I remember correctly, I think eMarketer said that live streaming reached like the 2023 projections or something like that.
Wow.
In terms of adoption. So
sure. Yeah, no concerts, no new like live events, all of that just moved online. Like comedy shows, everything. It's just live streaming now.
yeah. And anecdotally, it's pretty funny. I talked to some friends who, you know, are creators and have just been dabbling in Amazon Live, and they're like, oh, it's amazing. Like you can sell so much, and you know, they get that affiliate fee. So I really think there's something there, and the secret's sort of going to be out pretty soon.
Yeah, for sure. Do you ever worry that, you know, all these social platforms are just starting to converge and offer the same thing? Like, I know that me and my co-founder Thomas kind of roll our eyes when, you know, a new platform introduces stories, or, hey, now here's our TikTok competitor. It just feels like, where's the differentiation anymore, right? You used to go to Instagram and it was photos, and then Snapchat had your kind of short form messaging. And now it's like, well, if they all do the same stuff, what really sets each one apart?
Yeah, it's so annoying. Like I was just seeing today, let's see, Facebook launched what I think is now their third TikTok competitor. So like they did Lasso before they launched Reels, and they shut that down, I don't know, a few months ago. Then they launched then they launched Reels, which is obviously part of Instagram. And then they're launching a new one. I think it's called Collab. And it's a standalone app. And then they're also launching a Cameo competitor. I saw like, yeah. And then like, you know, Snapchat doing Spotlight, and, you know, even TikTok is going to be rolling out 3-minute long videos. So, you know, not that that's long form, but you can kind of almost see it as a little bit of a potential defensive play against like a YouTube or that sort of thing. So,
yeah. It's like they're always constantly watching what's happening in the industry and saying, how do we get a piece of that pie too, right? Like even back in the early days of YouTube, but then they rolled out Merch Shelf, or when they, you know, acquired FameBit to do branded content. It's like, okay, we see all of these businesses growing up around our platform. What can we do to get a piece of that? I remember when Patreon launched, it starts getting traction. YouTube's like, okay, we're launching Tip Jar. Like all this stuff just feels like so reactionary to what's happening in the surrounding ecosystem.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bit frustrating and annoying, and especially because, like, yeah, to your point, it's like before it was like, okay, Instagram is for this, Twitter is for this, and that made it a bit easier to sort of plan for, you know, the brands that, you know, we're working with. But now it's, you know, you're formatting things for so many different platforms. It's tough to sort of, you know, zero in on what's important, and you know, what battles to pick.
Yeah, for sure. So some big news that came out this week that kind of ties into all of this is Reddit's announcement that they're acquiring Dubsmash, right? No real deal terms were communicated or shared, but it seems like a pretty interesting move for Reddit, right? They've finally come out and shared their daily active users. They had pretty significant growth in traffic this year, excuse me, but it tends to still be kind of a young male audience, and now they're trying to get into the video space. What do you think of the deal? What are your thoughts on the future of Reddit?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting and a bit of a head scratcher at first. You know, it's, you know, very text versus, you know, video and app focus. And I feel maybe I'm wrong about this, but I kind of assume most of Reddit users are using desktop. You know, there's not a lot of immediate sort of parallels, but I think from a cultural standpoint, to a certain extent, it makes sense. You know, Reddit is almost like a feeding ground into, you know, all the other platforms in terms of like the memes and trends, like, you know, the thing that starts on Reddit, your mom is looking at a month later, sort of thing. And I think there's a lot of parallels to Dubsmash in that sense, and that, you know, a lot of the really popular TikTok dances and trends emerge in Dubsmash, like, the Renegade, which was like the biggest TikTok dance of the year. That stemmed from the Dubsmash community. So I think from that sense, it sort of makes sense. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they sort of, what they do with that.
Definitely. And I thought one of the coolest things that they emphasized as part of the news was that Dubsmash is so focused on diversity and inclusion, right? That the audience is very inclusive of minorities, skews a little bit more female-centric, which can be interesting too, to offset what the traditional Reddit audience looks like. So it's cool to see the changing kind of cultural composition as a result.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Nice. So some other big acquisition news, this month has been Sony picking up Crunchyroll, right? So Warner Media and AT&T kind of getting its house in order and saying, hey, we're going to move this anime service over to Sony, which already owns Funimation, kind of bringing these two powerhouses together in a huge transaction. What do you think of kind of like the niche SVOD world and Sony's play there?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I'm less familiar with those specifically, but I can see the strategy in the sense that there's sort of, I like this idea that a lot of businesses are just like bundling or unbundling things. And if you think about it, that's sort of like an unbundling. So it's like you can focus just on the anime audience. Mm-hmm. And in this era where there's sort of these broad platforms, there's your Hulu, there's your Netflix and HBO Max and Disney Plus, like they're all pretty broad for a general audience. So I could picture something like Crunchyroll really having a really passionate user base, and that brand sort of being their differentiator in the sense that, like, if this is all you watch, don't pay for all this other stuff. Like, you might get one or two anime shows. Just come here and like get everything you need. You're never going to run out. So from that standpoint, I think it's really interesting. And I wonder if that's just the way things are going to go until people realize they've got too many of these platforms they're subscribing to. And then there's more bundling that happens again.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a common theme in media, right? Is constant bundling and unbundling as new technologies and formats disrupt the traditional, ecosystem. But yeah, I think what's interesting is if you look at assembling, okay, what's my premium entertainment lineup going to look like? Your options today are cable and broadcast television, which continually look less and less appealing as prices go up and selection goes down. You have streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, HBO Plus, et cetera. But then you also have, these kind of TV replacement services like Sling or YouTube TV, which also have crept up in value, or in cost over time. So it does feel like, most people now lean towards, okay, I'm going to have my base level subscription, whether that's Amazon Prime Video, Netflix, et cetera. And then I'm going to kind of pick and choose my personal preferences. I like anime, I'm going to do this, or I'm a horror fan, I'm going to get Shudder, right? So it does feel like these niche content SVOD plays are smart because, they're very cost effective for the super fan. And then, if you think about the traditional cable bundle, you're paying for a lot of stuff that you're not interested in. And now you kind of can have a baseline plus your passion pieces, and dollar per dollar, it's more value, but less cost than what you were getting before.
Yeah. I mean, and to a certain extent, you can see parallels with sort of like, YouTube and Patreon. It's like, you've got so much content on YouTube, you're never going to run out, but like, maybe there's just one creator you like and they release, exclusive video on YouTube from time to time. So it's worth it for you to just get that additional, bit of content and pay for it. It really is interesting. And like, I think it goes to show if you've got a passionate fan base, you can really kind of monetize any vertical.
Yeah, I think that's been, for me, the most fundamental change in the last 10 years is that when this business started, right, back when we were running paid media campaigns, or you were working on social strategy in 05, 6, 7, 8, it's like okay, the way that you can monetize is advertising. You're on YouTube and that's kind of it. And then you're praying and hoping and wishing that Facebook and TikTok and Instagram, all these other platforms will launch monetization. But for the most part, it's kind of been few and far between for creators, unless you're a big publisher or some breakout success story, which doesn't happen that often. So now that composition has totally changed. You can exist as a creator through direct to fan monetization. That's tipping, it's merchandise sales, it was touring, right? I think we'll see that return, but live streaming or whatever, direct to your fan clubs, things like that. That's the coolest thing for me, is that all of these additional platforms and then the surrounding ecosystem have created other monetization opportunities for creators.
I completely agree. And I think it's incredibly exciting. And it's an aspect of the business that I'm a little bit almost like envious of, because I really think that's the future. And I think creators are making more money when they're doing it smartly. I mean, like we saw, okay, like David Dobrik, he launched the disposable camera app, and that initially it was like you could pay for photos. I think you could pay to unlock the photos faster. Maybe there was one or two other revenue streams. That thing blew up, got 2 million installs, and now they're turning that into a social network. He launched a perfume. He just launched a puzzle that he sold $500,000 worth of, 30, he sold 17,000 puzzles at $30 a pop in an hour. And like, who knows how many he's sold total now. So he made $500,000 in an hour right there. Logan Paul on his podcast a few months ago, he shared that his first year selling merch, he made 30 to 40 million in sales. Like, I don't know what his profit margin is, but I'm sure it's pretty healthy. These creator driven brands, I think, are really powerful, and we're just starting to see the beginning of them. And I think it makes so much sense that they would invest in themselves, because it's like, you're not just selling a product, you're kind of encouraging and sparking additional fandom. So it's kind of, you get a double whammy in a lot of ways. It's like, it's 2 for 1.
For sure. So now that we're, drawing to a close here in 2020, it's a natural time to kind of think back and reflect on the year. Anything that stood out to you in 2020? I mean, obviously there's some big ones, right? Coronavirus and the impact on social media and the creator economy. But what are some of the key trends or themes that you've observed over the past year?
Yeah. Well, I think one that's really interesting is we've seen this sort of fractured media landscape with social in particular. And I think a lot of people skewing more towards their, like, these private channels. So like Discord obviously exploded this year. I was reading somewhere that it was like in early September, when sort of the Among Us thing was like at its fever pitch. They were getting 800,000 installs a day apparently. Community, the text message platform, Obama signed up for it this year. So there's like sort of the dark social piece of it. And then there's also like just emerging platforms. I mean, after Biden was elected, we saw a lot of the right sign up for Parler and MeWe. And then we've got all these sort of, this whole ecosystem around TikTok, Triller, Zin, Dubsmash, there's a ton of other ones. So yeah, I think one trend is this sort of fractured social landscape, and people skewing more towards congregating around their interests in private channels. Another one is definitely the live streaming commerce space. Live streaming exploded this year. I'm sure it might dip a little bit, but there's a new baseline that's established, and that's, it's just going to keep growing. And I think commerce is going to become a big part of it. So I think that's another one. I think influencer marketing, a lot of brands' hands were more or less forced this year into doing it when maybe they didn't do that much, or they had never done it before, because for a lot of them, they didn't have any other alternatives. It was the only path they could go down if they wanted production.
And have you seen good results from brands that were new to influencer this year, that were trying, influencer marketing campaigns for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I feel like it's very rare that we don't see good results of influencer marketing. I would say that's very much the exception rather than the rule. So overall, yeah, I mean, it's been great. And honestly, one of the added benefits of all this is, with some of the brands that we work with, sort of like a handful of our brands, we do like, really long influencer activations, like year-long activations. And so the creators they signed in January, or even December of last year, I guess even as late as February, we signed these year-long deals, and most of them have just seen massive growth. Like we signed some live streamers, um, and I don't know, I think their audience is like tripled. So the rates we negotiated um, in January or whatever really paid off in a big way.
Nice. Yeah, I love that the commentary on what we've seen this year, and also it kind of leads into some predictions for next year. One of the biggest being, you're right, I think we're observing this massive shift in the social web from kind of the 1.0 era of YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, that were all about broadcasting yourself to a general wide audience. And this new kind of 2.0 era of social media platforms seems much more focused on, individual identities, private communities, right? Whether that's Discord community, as you mentioned, OnlyFans, right? Explosive growth this year, right? These are becoming the private social networks that people, might belong to, or you have kind of a different identity that you do on this Discord for this influencer you follow versus, if you're in politics and you're doing stuff in Parler, or maybe we'll see some progressive alternatives to those platforms. That's a really fascinating thing to see, is that fracturing is leading to, these smaller subsets of identity in private closed door relationships rather than open broadcast formats.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It'll be interesting to see how it develops.
And how do those platforms scale, right? I mean, if you've got, we've seen, Department of Justice is saying, hey, we need to usher in this new era in which the advertising space and data collection isn't just dominated by a few huge giants. They're already looking into Google. They, dropped the suit against Facebook just a couple of weeks ago. And they're threatening, the Facebook, Instagram acquisition that's now, 8 years old. So it feels like, okay, is this going to happen organically as a result of all these new platforms emerging? Or do we need policy changes? Do we need new legislation to protect these fledgling social platforms so that they can amass a significant audience, reach advertisers, which ultimately feels like a good thing for consumers, for creators, and for brands. But how do we make sure that happens in the right way?
Yeah, it's interesting. I also wonder if the end goal for all these platforms even needs to be scale. It's like, I think historically we've thought about it as a necessity because it's all about sort of like, as many eyeballs as possible. So you get like you're like a necessity for advertising. But I almost wonder if there's opportunities for these different platforms to really sort of own their niche and, for lack of a better term, be content with that and make a nice living. Like maybe they'll never be a Google or a Facebook, but they're a small team ish making millions of dollars. Like I don't know. I kind of wonder if there's going to be an evolution. I do have concerns about sort of the Facebook monopoly. I mean, I'm not super savvy from all that from like a data privacy standpoint and the implications, but the sort of way they do copy things, and then I think as a result kind of squash some of the competitors, I don't particularly like. But yeah, I don't know. I do think it'll be interesting to see if some of these platforms can really just be thriving businesses without having a billion people on the platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully so. What other predictions do you have for next year? Anything else you're excited about, or trends you're continuing to follow?
Yeah, well, actually, shameless plug, sign up for my newsletter because I'm rolling these out right now.
There
I'm
we
doing
go.
this like 3-part blog post about, or a series about sort of where I think things are headed. And I think one is the rise of dark social, which we've more or less already covered. Two is the live streaming e-commerce that's just going to be through the roof. And then three, I think is going to be the creator, influencer led brands and products. I think that, George Foreman model for influencers, is really going to be the next frontier for so many products. And it just makes sense because it's like the ultimate, growth hack for a business. You've got the marketing just built in, like you've got whatever 50% of your costs just covered right there. So and I think the brands who are already sort of established that don't understand and partner up with influencers in the same way that they do with maybe an athlete endorsement, I think they're going to be really left behind. I mean, so many brands, they go and they work with an influencer and they pay them to do one
Just
video or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, what if, like, think about the parallels of that to other aspects of advertising. What if Nike, had done that with Jordan? Like, and then Adidas had paid him for another game. Like, it'd be idiotic. Like, it wouldn't have an impact. And so I don't understand why these principles or brands have had such a difficult time wrapping their head around these sort of core principles and not carry them over to influencer marketing.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we've seen the success, right, of longer term brand ambassador programs where, you really, see a truly incredible partnership between a brand and an influencer, that they can create something so special and unique together that wouldn't have been possible on their own, right? If the influencer doing his or her thing versus a brand trying to think of, its traditional communication strategy, it's really special when you can bring those two together and think over a long-term horizon. Okay, what are the tent pole things that the brand needs to hit this year? What stories is the influencer really passionate about sharing with his fans and engaging the audience around? And that's, those are the most special types of influencer activations that we've seen for sure.
Yeah. Well, and look at the Ryan's World phenomenon. I mean, I think it was reported he's made $250 million in merch sales this year off of his toy lines, his toothpaste, and all this. So, I mean, and he's got 2.5 times the amount of views as Sesame Street on YouTube. Is that he might be the next Sesame Street? I'm not saying he is, but it's very easy to see that path. I mean, he's probably more, 3 to 5 year olds are watching Ryan's World than Sesame Street right now. So what does that mean 10, 20 years from now? It's if they can sort of expand beyond just him, because he's going to get old pretty quick, or Coco Melon or any of these. Like,
sure.
These aren't necessarily like great, 1 to 2 man businesses. These are, I mean, that's a $1 billion business basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. And that's the brilliance of, what Chris and the team have built at Pocket Watch. Is they identified it's not about scale, it's about, finding these influencers where you can develop IP and that, can reach a big audience, but you don't need tens of thousands of influencers to do that. You can do it with the right, smaller group of talent. And yeah, the Coco Melon success story and what they're doing with Moonbug, it's the same thing, right? Talking with Patrick recently, it's all about, okay, how do we, develop IP, think about the brand strategy, create really engaging content, and focus more on the quality over quantity. Don't just, the social algorithms tend to make you think, oh, I need to upload every day. Coco Melon said, forget that. We're going to focus on creating one premium 3D animation video for toddlers every week. And that's led to their meteoric growth. So sometimes you have to be a bit contrarian in terms of what the typical playbook might be on social to really find that next level of success.
Yeah, big time.
Nice. What does the future hold for Mekanism? What are you guys cooking up for next year?
Ooh, that's a good question. Next year's looking good. I mean, I think broadly speaking, it's we're really focused on growth. it's looking like 2021 is going to be a good year, which is great given, at the start of all this in March, I think we were all a bit worried. But I think our focus really is sort of a realignment in terms of balancing performance with brand. And now it's not enough to sort of create great work that promotes the brand. It's also got to be effective. And so we're doing some sort of restructuring internally to get everyone working a bit more integrated, a little bit more lean and faster, because so much of it is the ability to be relatively nimble. And so getting a lot more of the social people in earlier, all that stuff is a big part of the process for next year.
For sure. Very good. Well, we'll look forward to that. And Brendan, one of my favorite questions to ask everyone who comes on the show is, thinking about the white space out there, the opportunity that you might identify as an entrepreneur. If you were to start a new business in the digital media space today, what would you do?
Okay, I've got a few. One, if I just had to start a business and start generating revenue tomorrow, I'd probably just start a TikTok influencer agency or a management company. That's not going away anytime soon, and it's just going to be growing. The other would be potentially a live streaming e-commerce play. I don't know exactly what, to be honest, because I don't think you'd want to develop. I don't think you can compete with an Amazon Live. There's going to be a handful of platforms, and I wouldn't try and build one of those, but maybe it's tools, or maybe it's a talent network.
I think what Network is doing is really cool in that space.
Oh my gosh, yeah, those guys are killing it. And Max Benader is doing some cool stuff in the space.
Definitely.
And so I think there's something really big there. And then what was the other one? Yeah, and then the other would probably be developing a product with an influencer, because that's sort of low-hanging fruit. Yeah, I think those are probably the three that immediately come to mind.
Yeah, all good ideas, and it's clear there's no shortage of them. Yeah, lots of opportunity as the space continues to grow really quickly. Right on. Brendan, where can people find out more about you and more about Mekanism?
Just Google my name. You'll see my website, my LinkedIn, whatever platform of choice you've got, it'll pop up. Follow me. But I would say if you can, sign up for my newsletter. I think that's the sort of new thing that I'm focused on, and I am rolling out some what I would like to think is some pretty cool stuff. So right
on. Well, I'll encourage everybody to check out your newsletter for sure. Follow your LinkedIn updates. Maybe even watch your content on TikTok as you continue to grow your audience there and experiment. So super cool. And Mekanism always doing amazing, innovative things in the social space. So encourage people to check that out.
Yeah. And it's Mekanism with a K. Sorry, I was so focused on myself.
No worries, man. Got to build that personal brand. There we go. Well, Brendan, dude, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure getting to chat and pick your brain about everything going on in the digital space, what's changing in social media heading into 2021. So thanks again for sharing your insight and perspective.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for tuning in. I'm James Creech, and this has been another edition of All Things Video. If you like what you hear, we hope you'll share and subscribe for new episodes. See you next time.